Hey everybody, my name is Juan. I am just one reader, and this is the Garden book tag, which was created by Amy over at Dusty Bookshelf, and I was tagged by Adrian from Stripped Cover Lit. The first question is Rambler Rose, a long read with multiple main characters and plot lines. It twists, turns, and puts on a show with language. And for this, I chose my favorite trilogy of all time, without a question. It is his Dark Materials by Philip Pullman. This is kind of a middle grade, young adult fantasy trilogy. It's amazing. The themes are so adult and so fantastic, but the wonderful thing about this is that you can read it as a child and get at face value, you just get like the adventure plotline and the magical aspect of this book. But if you read it as an adult, you can pick up on a lot of things that are buried there, that Philip Pullman has planted there, and it's just such a delightful read, and it's so wonderful, and it has a lot of different characters. It takes place in sort of parallel universes, parallel worlds, and it's just, for me, it's the definition of an epic fantasy trilogy. Question number 2 is Hybrid Tyros, and this is a modern and long-lasting collection of 20th or 21st century poetry or short stories that stay with you for a long time. Now, this question was difficult because I'm not sure I've read exactly what the question says. So I just changed it, and it's just my favorite short story collections. And so I have two. One of them is like a runner-up, and then I have a winner. So the runner-up is A Guide to Being Born by Ramona Ossibel. I read this early on this year, and it's wonderful. The short stories talk about very human, very painful topics, and it's wonderful. And the clear winner is my favorite book of 2016 so far, and that is Magic for Beginners by Kelly Link. Actually, Stripped Cover Lit made a review on Stone Animals, which is one of my favorite stories in this collection. Question 3 is Lilacs, a seasonally inspired book that you look forward to revisiting every year. And of course, I went with Harry Potter, the typical answer. This Harry Potter is something that I usually read at the end of the year, and right now I am starting Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets because I'm doing a series on rereading Harry Potter as an adult. Question 4, Bleeding Heart. This is a beautiful, dark work that broke your heart. And I'm not sure this broke my heart in the way that the question suggests, but this was such a harrowing novel, and I enjoyed it so much, and I admired it so much, and the writing was superb. And it's just one of those novels that had everything, and it's for sure it's one of my favorite novels that I've read so far this year, and that was The Vegetarian by Han Kang. It's dark, it oozes weirdness, and it was filled with great literary moments, in my opinion. Question 5 is Queen Anne's Lace, a work that is sometimes seen as a weed, but you see it for what it is, great literature. And this is A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. This is for sure one of the most polarizing books out there. People seem to love it or hate it, and a lot of people really hate it, and they are right, because this book can be misinterpreted, I think. I mean, it all depends on how you interpret the book. And I've seen a lot of great people and great booktubers review this book in such a negative way, and I totally agree with them, because what they see in the book, what they interpret, what they get out from the book, I mean, they're right. I cannot question that. But what I got from the book and what I interpreted from the book was very different. Maybe it was because I saw this book from a very psychoanalytical viewpoint. I was very influenced by psychoanalysis in my career when I was reading this, so I guess I just saw this book as a fairy tale that explored death and life and topics that are not easy to discuss. And yeah, I know this book is very questionable, but I really enjoyed it. Question 6 is Forget Me Not. And this is an early bloomer, a work that you read early in life and you will never forget. And I chose A Series of Unfortunate Events by Daniel Handler, aka Lemony Snicket. These were the first books that I probably got obsessed with. I remember I would read one book a day and then I would go to school the next day and pick up the next one. And yeah, I was just completely addicted to them, and I will always cherish the memory of reading this series for the first time. Question 7 is Pansies, a classic that is losing popularity. Once upon a time, everyone had them in their garden library, but now they're being replaced with begonias. And I went with a middle grade series, or young, I don't know if it's middle grade or young adult, but it's the Artemis Fowl series by Owen Colfer. When I was growing up, these were huge, these were so popular, and I remember I was in love with them. The characters and the plot and the world building, this was just one of my favorite series growing up, alongside Harry Potter and the Chronicles of Narnia and His Dark Materials, and A Series of Unfortunate Events. And I just loved Artemis. I identified with Artemis so much. She was like my favorite male protagonist that I read when I was growing up. And right now, I don't think these are very popular anymore. There's just so much middle grade fantasy that's being published right now that no one seems to care for My Dear Artemis anymore. Number 8 is Trillium. This is a book that is challenged or banned, so a banned book. And I chose a book that was banned to me specifically. This was a book that I was forbidden to read, but I still read it and I loved it. And it was The Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown. I know this is not great literature or anything, but I really love Dan Brown's thrillers. They're just such fun. And I read this when I was 11 years old, fairly young, very young. And I was in a very Catholic, very Catholic traditional school, so obviously reading The Da Vinci Code was banned. And I still didn't care. I was kind of like a rebel when it came to the books that I wanted to read. So I would just take the book, sneak the book in, and I would read it while my teachers didn't see me. Question 9 is Orchid. And this is a work that was as challenging to read and maintain as an orchid. And I chose Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke. It took me over a month to read this beast of a novel. It's so wonderful, but it's not easy. It's definitely a book that I would hesitate to reread and pick up again because it is such a big endeavor and it demands a lot of time and dedication because the language is so beautiful and so delicate and so specific that you really want to taste and savor every word. Yeah, this was not easy, but ultimately it was very satisfying and rewarding. And finally, question 10 is Fern. It's a book that sparked your initial interest on a topic before sporing into a whole TBR of books on that topic. And I chose 2 for this question. One of them is Swamplandia by Karen Russell. This is probably my favorite novel that I've read this year. It is haunted me, it stuck with me, and I just can't stop thinking and dreaming about it. It is magnificent. It's so much my type of book. And this has made me want to read more fabulous fiction, magical realism, and fabulous fiction. For example, I am reading right now 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, and it's mainly because of this. And the other answer that I chose for this question is Revolution in Mind, The Creation of Psychoanalysis by George Macari. This is a wonderful book on the history of psychoanalysis that I have slowly made my way through, and it's wonderful. I am a big Freud scholar. I love books that talk about Freud and the psychoanalytical movement. Being a training psychoanalyst myself, this is so close to me and so important to me. It feels like you're reading the history of your family in a way, because psychoanalysis in particular, as time goes by, as we go into the future, psychoanalysis is becoming a very closed circle. Not everyone knows or really believes in psychoanalysis anymore, but the few of us that do become like a family. And so this is like reading the history of my family, and it's so amazing. It's such a joy. Guys, thank you very much for watching the tag. As to who I'm going to tag, I'm going to tag everyone that sees this video. Feel free to do it. It's very fun. I will see you on the next video.